is when we have this expectation of how something is going to go, or we're trying to control a situation. It often causes that unalignment when there's a hiccup or a speed bump that we run into when life is lifing.
Welcome to Healing Conversations podcast.
Podcast.
Yes. Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Healing Conversations
Hello.
podcast.
Podcast.
I
Welcome,
I
welcome.
was waiting for the podcast. I feel like that's the little theme. After I say podcast, you're like, podcast.
I'm excited.
But welcome back to Healing Conversations podcast. As you know, this is our safe space to talk all things expansion, all things growth, all things healing. And I'm a firm believer is as we heal individually, we send that ripple out to the collective by being the example of what healing and change looks like instead of preaching it and try to teach it to people who may not be open and available to receive it.
Yes, and like we love to say here, Raymel and I are here on this journey with you. We are not experts, we're not gurus. We are simply here to share this safe space with you. So, whatever is coming up for you, we would love to hear it. You can comment, you can email, reach out to us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you're getting this. Let us know how this session today, especially because I'm excited, impacts you, and anything that comes up that you would like us to talk about in further episodes. But without further ado, I want us to jump into this. We have a special guest today. We have
Yes,
known
our
her for a
first
couple of
guest
years.
of Helen Conversations podcast. I'm so excited about it. Go ahead and do the
Yes.
intro, Sister Angelique.
Okay, okay. So today we have Leah Abraham. She is a childhood sexual trauma support. I don't know if it's officially a therapist, but she does work with adults who are ready to heal their childhood sexual trauma. She holds a beautiful room on Thursdays called Trauma Drama, and we get to unpack so many layers of things and have so much expansion and community in that space. And it's been so lovely just to know her over these couple of years virtually. We still have yet to meet, depending on when you're listening to this. But I know it is going to be happening soon and very soon. She is the creator of the 5-step healing process, where she takes people through a journey of how to process their trauma and the challenging experiences that they have, which we will be touching on. Well, she will be touching on because it's her thing, right? And yeah, just kind of without me yapping too much about her, I will allow her to introduce herself and we'll get rolling into this conversation.
Oh my gosh.
Leah.
Thank you guys so much. It's such an honor to be your first guest and that you guys thought of me to bring me on as your first guest. It really means a lot. Over the years, we have kind of built a relationship around our healing, and I appreciate that you both have been through the 5 steps a couple times, and that you see value in what I'm building, what I'm creating, what I'm offering to the world. So I'm super excited to share it here on the Healing Conversations podcast with you guys today. Thank you for having me, and I'm ready to jump in.
Yes. Oh my goodness.
Yes.
I'm so excited. I like to, as you know, in this space, this is what our fifth or sixth episode. So you know the flow that we bring real life experiences where we currently are, presently are, not where we were, not what we were worried about being, but where we are, and we unpack it by talking about it. So today we're going to talk about navigating through just the unexpected challenges that life may throw, and you may like have a schedule or a plan or something that you are wanting to commit to or do or wanting to show up for, but life lives and things happen. And I know for me, there was an old pattern that would come up is that I would judge myself. I would criticize myself and make myself feel like I need to do better or I need to rush and do the thing so I can show up and just be the one who is always on time or always doing the thing. But I realized that when life happens, there's things that you can't control. And often, what we can't control, we tend to try to control, which makes us feel out of control when it comes to reactions
Mm.
and things in life. So when we're showing up, we may show up in panic, we may show up in frantic, we may be in the rush, which is centered from a space of deregulation. So mentally, you're not thinking with much clarity. Emotionally, you are all over the place, which means that it often creates more problems, if we want to call it that, or more resistance, versus just allowing yourself to hold that space for grace, taking that moment to breathe, being able to know, like, okay, I didn't make it when I was supposed to or do it when I wanted to, but it's happening. And I wanted to bring that to the conversation today because I feel like that's something that we often all navigate through at some point in time. But the conversation of grace, compassion is what we
Mm.
don't often talk about, but also what's keeping us from doing that? What's keeping us from really leaning into that? So I want to bring that into the conversation. And Lee, I would like you to just see which step in the 5-step healing do you feel would really support bringing awareness to the root to support others to working through like how to not let it cause them to feel stagnant or stuck in the self-guilt, shame, or blame.
Mm. Thank you so much, Ramel. And thinking about what step pertains to this, I'm going to start with step one, alignment, because what you just
Mm,
shared there is when we have this expectation of how something is going to go, or we're trying to control a situation, it often causes that unalignment when there's a hiccup or a speed bump that we run into when life is lifing. It causes that unalignment, like, wait a minute, I planned it this way and now it's shifted, and it causes us to move out of our alignment. So I want to focus on step one, which is alignment. And that's when our mind, our body, and our spirit are all aligned in the present moment, like where we're at in this moment. So when we're aligned in the present moment, we are better equipped to handle anything that comes our way. If when we're unaligned, that's when things start to break up, or we start to lose it, or we get mad, or we start to react, or we start feeling like I can't do this, or we go into freeze mode, our nervous system activates or whatever. So I think really in today's conversation, I want to focus on step one, which is our alignment, keeping our mind, our body, and our spirit where we're at in the present moment, all connected. And so I'll just touch on that a little bit and then I'll pass back to you. When we think of the body, it's our physical body. And I like to say the body is made up of the brain, the heart, and the gut. So that's our physical body that's always where we are. When we think of the spirit, we're thinking of what gives life to our body. So what is it that's beating our heart, breathing our lungs? What is that intelligence that's running through our body, giving us life? That's spirit.
Mm.
So if we're alive, spirit is also here. So it's the mind that tends to move out of the present moment. We're thinking about the past, like, oh no, this is happening and it's going to be just like last time, and I don't know if I can handle that. Or we're thinking about the future. Oh, it's all the anxieties that the future can hold. Or we're in our creative imaginative mode, where we're creating stories that
mm,
based on maybe a few facts, but we're filling in the blanks with our imagination. And so the mind travels out of the present moment all the time. And especially when we're triggered or we're faced with something difficult, the mind wants to escape. So it's really the practice of keeping the mind connected to the body, connected to the spirit, and in the present moment. And that's when we're at our most powerful and we can come up with a solution, or we can ride the waves of life's crazy ocean or whatever. But yeah, so thank
mm.
Life's crazy ocean. Oh, wow, Leah. I really appreciate that. Um, Especially because when we are deregulated, it does tend to come from our thoughts. Yes, there are certain things happening in our physical realm where our body is navigating, especially, with the work of trauma, physical trauma, sexual trauma. Um, and then with the spirit is eternal. There is no time, right? It just is. So it's really the mind where all of the deregulation comes from. From at least that's what I'm hearing. That's what I'm getting. And I really appreciate that you're starting with the first step, right? I
Mm-hmm.
would love for you to just like quickly list them, but I do feel like having alignment is a foundation of being able to navigate anything. Because
Absolutely.
when we are centered, when we are grounded, when we have stability in ourselves, every situation that comes up, we are certain and confident in ourselves that we have a solution, that there is something working for our good, that there are resources and things available to us. It's only when we start to get deregulated, when we become unaligned, when we feel confused, that's when things start to get rocky and we get uncertain. And then we start to spiral, like Raymel was saying, it starts to just go deeper and deeper. But yeah, I really appreciate that. But could you just really quickly tell us what the 5 steps are?
Yeah, absolutely. So first step is alignment, ensuring that our mind, our body, and our spirit are in the present moment, like where we are. The second step is self-love. So building a foundation of self-love. And just to touch on that slightly, the very first step of self-love is acknowledgement. So
Mm,
this means, acknowledging all of our parts, our dark parts, those parts that we've hidden away that we don't want to show the world, but acknowledging every aspect of who we are, our past and the things that have happened now. Um, so that's what I mean by self-love, acknowledgement and acceptance. And then the third step is our trauma, acknowledging the trauma, knowing that that really happened to us and kind of removing the veil of denial that we have surrounding the trauma. The fourth step is addiction. So looking at the ways that we have learned to cope with our traumatic experiences. Where there's trauma, there's always some form of addiction. And when I say addiction, I'm referring to any pattern that we engage with that is outside of our alignment. So
Mm-hmm.
that can look like many things, not just what we as culturally associate with addiction. It can be anything. It can be lying or hiding or performing. So that's the fourth step. And then the fifth step is the tools, recognizing the tools that we have already acquired on our healing journey, and also acknowledging that our passions, the things that we're passionate about, especially from our childhood, are like preventative measures. And if we engage in those, if we utilize those as tools on our healing journey, it sets us up to be to support ourselves when life gets tough. So
Mm-hmm.
yes, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And I love, Leah, that you also like piggybacking off of Sister Angelique. It started with the first step, alignment. Because a lot of times we don't know that we're even out of alignment. So we are navigating through life, shifting, swifting, drifting into any direction because we don't really know that we are not balanced or grounded.
Mm,
And I always speak to what people may not have awareness to of, I should say. And a lot of times people don't know what they don't know. But also we have access to so much now, especially in 2025, to where when for example, when you're just like tired of being tired. You're tired of getting in your own way. You're tired of beating yourself up. You're tired of doing to you what others do.
mm,
Let's just speak to that. You're tired of doing to yourself what others do, but in the magnitude of what others did.
mm,
Because what they do now is a product of what they did in the past, and it just repeats itself in the present. And that becomes the standard in which we hold allowance to what we receive from others and what we give to ourselves. And the example of like not having things work out in the manner in which you thought they would or would like them to, a lot of times like that self-judgment that I was speaking to, I was judged as a child. If
Mm,
I didn't knock every checklist off, if I didn't do it the exact way in which I was told, you're this, you're that, you're this, you're that, and every name was called to me. And as a child, we start to accumulate that. We start to store that. So even the out of alignment or misalignment, I should say, that starts from a childhood. And we're growing up not in alignment. So that's why we don't know how to trust ourselves. We don't know how to show love to ourselves.
Mm.
And we're trying to search for things outside ourselves to be a solution, to be an answer. So if I don't do all the things right or show up when I want or do the things as I want, but someone else says it's okay, I will use that as my words of comfort instead of often giving that and saying that to myself. So even as you like broke down the five
mm,
steps and even spoke of self-love, I love that that's the one that's right under alignment. Because if you're not in alignment, self-love is not something that you have the ability to practice. And a lot of times we live in a world where they're like, love yourself and compassion. And when I used to hear that, y'all, like, I wanted to, but I didn't know how to. And I
mm,
would say the words, I would do the affirmations and all the things, but there was a disconnection. And I realized that it was a lot of things that I was still holding shame and judgment of or about that helped me from really receiving those words because as I would say, "Oh, I love you. You're amazing." No, you're not. Look at what you're doing. Look at what you did. And that voice would counterpart it. And I would listen to that because once again, that's what I heard as a child.
mhm.
I heard throughout my life experience. And most importantly, I would hear from myself. So I just wanted to bring that in and just like thank you for talking about the first step alignment. But is there anything else that you would like to add in regards to the first step and just like the shares or the and just where the conversation is now?
Yeah, I think you pinpointed it, Raymel, that unalignment often happens in childhood. For most of us coming from trauma backgrounds, especially sexual abuse backgrounds, that unalignment happens first in childhood. We're sort of forced out of our alignment to find that, to seek that safety and comfort that's outside of ourselves. So it's that disconnect that happens as a result of the traumatic environment, the traumatic experiences, and the toxic people in our lives. You talk about that inner critic voice, like that begins as the voice of someone else, but we like take it on as ours over the years. And those negative experiences, they are what our core belief system is built around. So
Mm,
when you
Mm,
talk about like, saying those affirmations, oh, I love you, and then it's like, but the core belief system is like, nah, because remember, we're not worthy, we're not good enough, because that's the things we learned from our childhood experiences. That was the messages we received and what our core belief system is grown from. So recognizing that that disconnect that happens within ourself is huge, and that's a lot of what the healing journey is that like coming back home to ourselves, that the realignment of the mind that's searching for that safety and comfort outside of itself, but realizing, oh, I'm actually going to find that inside of myself. But we don't get that message as kids, like, so we're just seeking like what can make me better, what can make me more likable, what can make me enough,
mm,
mm,
we seek those things outside of ourselves, but it's really that journey back home and recognizing like it's here. I find those things inside of me. And then when I do that, it changes everything on the outside. You know, we set the standard of how people are going to treat us. You talked about that too. And, people treat us the way that we feel we deserve to be treated, whether or not we
mm,
consciously understand that, energy. And so like energetically, we attract the people that match our energy. So if we're
mhm,
inside of ourselves, criticizing ourselves, hating ourselves, then we're going to attract people that match that.
right.
It is that, the reconnection that happens inside, rebuilding that relationship with the self, and growing our self-love from the inside out. And then that in turn will attract the people that match our level of self-love. So it is important to understand that we set the standard of how other people will treat us in this life.
Mhm.
Yes, absolutely. Ooh, thank you for unpacking that. Um, because I really feel like Ray Mel said, you can't really tap into that self-love if you aren't aligned. But once you do, it's a really powerful tool to be able to navigate challenges as they come up, to, make changes because we are holding that compassion and that grace for ourselves. And it allows us to release that judgment, which often keeps us stagnant. You know, I heard something recently that I'm not going to fully reference, but it was referring to the idea of being critical as a way of getting things done with other people. And I was like, that sounds toxic. Because people do respond to positive reinforcement more deeply. And when we
Mhm.
really want to do something versus when we're wanting to avoid something, the product of that tends to come out better. So I just think that's really important that we release that self-judgment because it does keep us stuck and from actually taking those steps forward. And speaking of some steps forward, I would love if you could share some tips for our audience today. You're full of so much wisdom, and I know this conversation was like, oh, way too quick. We're used to talking for like 3 hours.
Is it already over?
I know. I know. But we'll definitely have you back at some point.
Yes.
So you all will definitely be hearing from Leah again, and definitely make sure you check her out on her socials, and we can drop all that after she drops these tips for today.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think to kind of stay with the theme of the first step, alignment. So staying in the present moment, keeping our mind's focused attention in our present moment. That's key. And it's a big practice because as we talked about in this conversation, much of our lives is spent unaligned, where the mind is disconnected from the body and it's kind of like in its own little world and we're moving through life but disconnected from a big piece of who we are. From that tool that we carry that is the mind. It's such a powerful
Mm,
tool that we have in this human experience. So practicing presence is always number one, and what that looks like is beginning to watch our own thoughts, like when the voice of the inner critic starts speaking, observing it and just listening to what we're saying, because
Mhm.
very often there's so much just that's going on in the subconscious in our thoughts that we're like not even aware of. And so being fully present with the mind's focused attention gives us that capability to build an awareness around what we're thinking and what are our patterns, like what are those thought patterns that continuously show up for us. um, so that's the very first thing, is practicing presence. And there are many different ways to do that. Like we've had lots of different conversations. Breathing is great.
Mhm.
Breathing is wonderful because it's something we can only do in the present moment. So when we're focused on our breath, it automatically brings our attention into the present. Journaling is another way because to take the thoughts, move them through the body and onto the paper, it takes a level of presence to do that. Meditation obviously brings the mind into the present moment. So there's lots of different modalities and ways to do that. It's important to find what works for us, but just moving with the intention of keeping ourselves here in the present with our thoughts, not in the past, not in the future, not creating the stories, but in the body, connected to the body so that we can sense, what's going on in the body because the body is
Mhm.
mm,
to us too. So that would be, the first and most important tip is practice presence, whatever that looks like for you and wherever you're at on your journey. The second tip is the self-love, and as I mentioned
Mhm.
before, it's acknowledgement. is the first level of self-love, acknowledgement. So those things that we don't like to talk about, or we don't want people to know about us, or, we talk about addictions, those things that we participate in to numb our pain or to escape, just simply acknowledge them instead of like seeing them as something separate from us, just recognizing that those are part of us, whether, they may be the darker parts of us, but they're still an aspect of who we are, and they complete us as a whole person. So practicing self-love in the way of acknowledging all of our parts.
Mm.
The third tip that I'll give is community. And we all know how important that is. That's how we met. We are part of each other's communities. And that's vital. That's vital on the healing journey, to have healthy support systems and people who are on a similar path and journey as you are. People that understand you on the deeper levels of your pain. I think that's really important. So those are
Yeah.
my 3 tips. You guys practice
Yeah.
practice self-love in the form of acknowledgement, and keep good people around you, people that build you up, that want you to succeed, and who are there for the healing journey. So thank you.
Yes, thank you, Leah. And I'm usually the one that wraps up and makes it like succinct, but you did a beautiful
I
job
was gonna
listing them
say you
all.
did the recap, so I'm like, so Angelique, you don't have
I
to.
can
I
take the day
love
off.
that. And I'm so grateful for those tips, Leah, because present self-love and community truly are simple, but so hard at times to even like be in the practice of being in the now, loving on yourself, and even trusting the new community. Because that's something that when you're not used to being around unconditional love and support, we often run away
Mm.
and not allow it in. So, yeah, I love that. And we did what we did today with intent because, as you heard, Leah has the 5-step healing process. And we gave you 1 step today. So, Leah, let the people know where they can get in contact or touch with you if they want to explore, and what ways can they have access to the 5 steps or coaching. What is a good way for them to contact or reach out to you?
Yeah, thank you guys. So I am most active on Instagram, Leah Abraham 1111. That's my favorite social platform. So you can find me there. You can DM me anytime there. That's usually the fastest response time. I also have my website, leahabraham.com, that has a lot of different videos where I'm talking about different subjects. Also on Thursdays, I hold the Trauma Drama Space, as Angelique had mentioned, and that happens at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time every Thursday. It's a conversation where the community comes together. We talk about trauma, abuse, sexual abuse, healing, and everything in between. So if that's a conversation you want to be a part of, it's open to anybody. That's a free space. That's where we build community, healthy community. So find me Thursdays on Zoom in Trauma Drama. And then I'm in a couple other places. On Sundays, I co-moderate a room in the intuitive parenting space. So I'm also a parent of 4. So that's a community that's very important for me as a parent and for other parents. Let's see. Yeah, and the next round of the 5 steps, I haven't set a date on that. I'm currently wrapping up my 5-step program that I'm in right now. Sunday's the last day, and then I'll set a date for the next one. But I do also do one-on-one coaching. So if you wanted to walk through the 5 steps one-on-one, we can do that. You can DM me if you're interested in that, or want to have a connection call. We can do that. So yeah, how you
Yes,
guys.
yes. We're so grateful for you, Leah. And like you heard, website, Zoom, she loves Instagram. DM her if you want to connect for the 5-step healing group. Whenever you happen to be listening to this, just go check it out. She might be running it right now.
Yes.
And she's, like she said, she's open for those one-on-ones as well. So Yes, we deeply appreciate you, Leah. And also, we are on Instagram on Saturdays at 3:30 p.m. Pacific time for our live healing conversations chat. So make sure you check us out on Instagram at Raymel Bentley and at VZ Spaces. And we also have some wonderful things going on, but this was an opportunity to spotlight Leah. So if you want to know what we're doing, hit
Yes.
us up on our socials. Anything else,
What
Raymel?
a gift it was to have you today, Leah, our first guest, and you brought so much value, so much awareness. And I do know that the people listening to this are going to have a lot of note to take and a lot of implementation to make in regards to putting this stuff to practice because we accumulate, but until we participate, nothing changes. Thank
Mm,
you all for joining us today for
yes,
Healing
thank
Conversation
you.
Podcast. We will
We'll
be
see you
back
next
next
week.
week.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.